For us. Yeah,
it's
no,
all right,
you're right.
but we're finishing, I think.
It's
Yeah, we don't do...
When Julian Pfeiffer and his friends established Orpheus, the first conductorless orchestra, they did not realize that over the next 20 years, their idea would develop into a model that could be applied to the business world. It all started at Harvard. The Orpheus Chamber Orchestra was the subject of a case study that focused on how the players successfully exercised shared leadership in their music making.
There's no chance of the leader attribution error operating in the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra because there's nobody on the podium. Indeed, there's no podium at all, okay? And yet, audiences flock to their concerts. Critics give them very good notices for the work that they do. But even more than that, the orchestra itself has gotten better and better and better as an ensemble over these 3 decades. And the individuals within the orchestra, they tell us, and our measures suggest, never cease in their professional musical growth over time. I mean, the question is, Orpheus is a bit of a mutant form. It doesn't look like all the other orchestras that you would see. And in social systems, just as in biology, one can often learn a lot from mutant forms. So I want to help my students and my colleagues learn what they can learn from this orchestra that operates differently than most large orchestras operate.
The Orpheus Chamber Orchestra was founded in 1972 by a group of musicians who aspired to create a new kind of orchestra, one that would give each individual the opportunity to create and take responsibility for the music.
Play the notes choppy.
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Wow, we have to really sort this out.
Yeah, so, you know, my part is really screwed up compared to the score. There are a lot of dynamics that are in the score that are not in my part.
It's the very first rehearsal that we will do on a piece. We'll have what we call the core, and it's usually made up of the principal players of each section without the rest of the section. And what we'll do is play through the score and try to decide overall what kind of basic interpretation we want to do with the piece. It makes it more efficient that we have not a definitive idea of what we're going to do, but we have a sort of a general sense of what we would like to do with the piece. When the orchestra's here, the other players can certainly speak up and say that they totally disagree with something the core has decided, and the group will sometimes accept that, sometimes reject the idea. So it's not like it limits the rest of the functioning of the group, but it gives us a head start of just being able to have a direction of where we're going once the full ensemble does come in.
Can we try to finish this? Yes.
At the beginning, it was always just doing it itself. The part of playing it without a conductor was such an exciting enough thing that, oh, we got through it, we just finished together, and that was all, you know, wonderful. But I think as people more mature more and wanted more for the music to be, and I think we are going in definitely the right direction in the sense that people want more than just to be together.
The central idea of Orpheus revolves around sharing and rotating leadership roles. The concertmaster and the principal players rotate with each piece. Everyone has a chance to be a leader and a follower.
What Orpheus has developed is something that obviously is very interesting in the music world and for the business that they are in. What has intrigued me and many of my colleagues in academia and in management is that many of these ideas look as if they could also be applicable in business, government, and other nonprofit organizations.
The IT revolution has changed the rules of the business world. Corporations are increasingly turning to new models of leadership and management. Old-fashioned organizations with hierarchical structures have been left behind.
American management styles tend to be this sort of cowboy management that says, I'm in charge, I'm a loner, and I make other people do things. Whereas a more global style might be viewed as one that's more collegial, collaborative. So we're trying to pass on to others this view that if you're going to get the full world to participate in growing your company or participating in your decisions, doing your research, inventing your new products, you probably got to be more collaborative. You've got to listen more.
There's also a growing body of evidence that shows that organizations that use teams as their basic work structures and use highly collaborative processes outperform their competitors.
Great ideas don't depend on hierarchy and they don't depend on seniority. They don't depend on a pyramid. They really depend on a network of participants who are seeking something in response to, the challenge of the moment. And I think Orpheus is saying, look, it doesn't have to be the way you've always thought about it. It doesn't have to depend on the guy in the front. And we can draw more deeply on people's talents by liberating them from that construct and saying, no, tell me what you think. What do you think? We're listening. Tell me what you think. Maybe we're going to do what you think.
Since 1998, Orpheus has given live demonstrations of the Orpheus process to major business schools, corporations, and community leaders.
Orpheus has a proprietary product development process, which is unique to them. And they were insightful enough to realize this. They were also insightful enough to realize that this would be of interest to the business community. And this, I think, gets right at the core of what we're trying to demonstrate by bringing Orpheus into the management education arena, that they have this capability for adaptability and creative thinking and insight, which in essence has allowed them to expand into an entirely new product area.
Teach executives how to do things. Executives are pretty willful, grown-up people. They know what they think. So to change the way they operate, you have to do something which breaks them out of their mold and their environment. So if you just bring in another business person, talk about how he does things, they just say, hey, I do it better than he does. I'll do it my way. Whereas when you bring in something totally different, like an orchestra, and say, now watch this and ask, could you run your bank and the meetings in your bank and the teams in your bank the way this orchestra runs, you may actually get them to change how they think.
I'm happy to report that I think all of our core members are here. While we have navigated the most difficult scores of Schoenberg, Ives, Stravinsky, on and on, we still have to work on our collaborative parking. Now, 29 years ago, there were probably only a couple of nuts in the orchestra who could consider that we could even do a Beethoven symphony without a conductor. After 10 or 12 years, more and more people in the orchestra, I think we could do this. I think we could tackle a Beethoven symphony. In the last 5 years, Orpheus has performed Beethoven Symphony number 1, 2, 3, 7, and last week, for the first time, we did Symphony number 4 in Carnegie Hall. Everything we do is a process, and that we never stop growing, and that we never stop challenging one another, and we never stop learning and being passionate about the music that we're involved with.
Maybe there shouldn't be a break. Could I ask also the 1, 2, 3, the fourth bar? Can the violin, can the strings emerge? I know it's the piano from the fortissimo chord.
Yes.
Not be separate?
Yes.
Connected.
So we have the full orchestra. You didn't clip it.
30 seconds.
Not too short.
Right. Eighth note.
Let's just try playing up.
Very good.
Oh my God.
Really? Why? I wonder if we could just try it.
It sounds very fleet.
Well, at 45, yum bum 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 bum, and then dum 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 bum bum, bing bum, and then bum. Could be more relaxed.
It'll be effective if we don't rush through all of them.
Well, let's try it very strict then. I'm happy to do that.
But I don't think it's really need to go that point yet.
Okay, let's do it. I'll behave. This time, let's try it very strict.
I think what we have respect for each other as a player, as a human being, and they're both together makes a chemistry to work. And for me, that's my feeding part. I feed off of this to grow myself, and in a way keep yourself very honest. Yes, and you have to be on top of. If you show up not prepared, other places you might get away with it, but you can't get away with here. And people are nice about it, but you feel you should have done better. So you always try to strive best what you do.
I was wondering, is this always so polished and civilized, the process? I saw no chairs being thrown or fist fights, as was previously alluded to, or is it because we're all here?
We'll show you the tapes from 20 years ago. It used to be fist fights.
I very much believe in continuous improvement, but what was interesting to me is, how do you keep track of all the suggestions? How do you know that all the things you've said end up in the final version?
I noticed that you all have scores, or some of you have scores to the piece. Some of them are on the ground, some of them are on the music stands. I was wondering if that's to just do your homework and everybody have a common understanding of the piece, or is it so that you can get clarity on each other's parts?
In baseball, there's very rarely a player-manager position where the person's out on the field, they're batting, yet they're trying to manage the team. It's been relatively unsuccessful in baseball. How has your organization been successful in having somebody conduct while actually trying to perform at the same time.
While we're here, we're doing any number of things. Besides playing your instrument, you have to be aware of what everybody else is doing, their motion. You have to be listening to what's going on. And the reason why we all had the score is because it's our job to know what everybody else is doing, what the bassoon is doing, what the first violins are doing at any time, so that you have this, in a sense, expanded consciousness, and that everybody has to have that. And the degree of success is directly dependent on how well everybody sees the big picture.
You're obviously very successful, and everything looks nice and great. But at the same time, I assume you're also human beings. And as human beings, you obviously have egos and things you like or don't like. How do you handle internal conflicts or disagreements without somebody actually at the top?
I would say it's actually a lot easier. I can't exactly go up to Kurt Masur and say, oh, Mr. Masur, I think we should make a crescendo in the fourth bar. That's the last I'm going to play for that guy.
Another point is that when somebody does something well, we also make a point of telling them that we really appreciate the leadership or the playing or whatever it is. And if you do that on an ongoing basis, you establish with that person that you have a tremendous amount of respect for them as a person and as a player. And then you get in their face one day and say, this is terrible what you're doing, and you don't completely undermine that. You go ahead and have a fight, but you know you're still friends. And I can point to a few people here I've had good fights with, and we're still friends. It's okay to feel strongly about something. It doesn't have to mean the end of the world.
One of the best things about Orpheus is the fact that they all rotate all the chairs all the time. So everyone will get a chance to really shine at some point. Whereas in a lot of orchestras, you're playing second trombone your whole life, and you may think you're better than the first trombone player your whole life, and yet he gets to play all the solos. So.
And also the switching of the roles puts, if one person is always in the leader role, that's terribly stressful. It's nice when you've been sitting up here to fade to the back every now and then and just let them figure it out,
I'm interested in how the members feel, what they feel most excited about being part of this orchestra, and where have your challenges come in terms of where your areas of professional and personal growth have come.
One of the most exciting parts is that we have a voice. Each of us we all have a voice. If we have a conductor situation, it's more of a passive kind of situation. We had a member years ago who used to play in the Cleveland Orchestra. I think he said under George Sell. Great orchestra. But that role was more or less, his role was more or less passive. In other words, they were being told what to do. We have a voice, and that can be frightening and can be very difficult at times, but it's also very, very exciting.
One of the questions that one might ask is this a viable long-term economic model? And one can look at any metaphor and see limitations. And obviously every metaphor, including sports or military, has limitations. But I believe that there's much to take away from Orpheus as a model for how we really bring more of what people have to offer onto the table rather than leaving it outside of work.
Okay, next, put your bags right here, all right? And then I'm going to walk you over to the bus.
Orpheus's visit to Berlin will provide an opportunity to demonstrate the orchestra's work process abroad and to find out whether its model can cross cultural borders.
Hierarchie hat deshalb, glaube ich, eine negative Konnotation, weil man es mit sehr autoritären Systemen verbindet. Eine Hierarchie kann dann natürlich positiv sein, wenn sie eine Entscheidung erleichtert. Man braucht Menschen, die Entscheidungen fällen in bestimmten Situationen. Das muss auch geregelt sein, wer letztlich eine Entscheidung fällt. Insofern sind Hierarchien per se nicht negativ. Aber das Wort Hierarchie, auf das habe ich jetzt eher angespielt, das Wort Hierarchien ist vielleicht auch gerade durch die deutsche Geschichte sehr negativ besetzt.
Dass flache Strukturen gerade für Deutschland, für entwickelte Gesellschaften nötig sind, weil in diesen Gesellschaften so viel an Erfahrungs- und Kenntnisreservoir so dicht vorhanden ist. Und man muss diese Erfahrungen nutzen. Ein Land, das nur eine kleine Führungsschicht hat, eine kleine Schicht von Erfahrenen und Kennern hat, mag sich eher hierarchisch organisieren können. Das Potenzial, das Intellektuelle, das Erfahrungspotenzial entwickelter Gesellschaften schreit danach, diese Erfahrungen abzufragen. Und die Abfragung dieser Erfahrungen ist ein anderer Begriff für eine flache Organisation.
The young design company Dan Perlman has grown rapidly over the last 3 years. Their projects, once modest in scope, now have budgets of 20 million euros and more.
Unsere Struktur setzt sich so zusammen, dass wir zwar 4 Geschäftsführer sind, aber dass wir genauso in den Teams mitarbeiten. Ein Team besteht immer daraus, dass wir einen Projektleiter haben, das sind im meisten Falle einer von uns. Dann haben wir Projektmanager und dann Architekten, Industriedesigner, Grafiker und so weiter, Kreative.
Es werden mir gewisse Vorgaben auch gestellt und an die halte ich mich auch. Und sonst von der ganzen Aufgabenformulierung gehe ich sehr verantwortungsbewusst um. Und ich denke, dass das jeder auch für sich selbst sehr stark definieren kann. Und das ist auch was Schönes. Man hat sehr viel Freiheit, aber man geht aber trotzdem davon aus, dass man verantwortungsvoll auch im Team miteinander kooperiert.
Okay, heute werden wir über Kabel-NRW sprechen. Das ist unser neuer Kunde, den wir in Nordrhein-Westfalen sitzen haben. Der macht Breitbandkabel. Wenn wir in Projekte gehen, müssen wir dafür sorgen, dass der Kunde Klarheit hat. Das geht nicht immer konform mit flachen Strukturen, denn der Kunde möchte wirklich einen Ansprechpartner haben und nicht mehrere, wobei bei uns sich die Kompetenz sehr oft auf mehrere verteilen. Und da in den Projekten sind wir stringent strukturiert. Im Kreativprozess sind wir chaotisch strukturiert.
Zur flachen Organisation gehört eine sehr intelligente, sehr überlegte Form des in einen Guss bringens der flach entstandenen Kreativität im Unternehmen. Dieses Problem haben straff hierarchische Unternehmen weniger. Dort ist schon von Anfang an die Ordnung und die Kanalisierung dessen, was im Unternehmen passiert, so streng, dass man nicht befürchten muss, dass dort Chaos entsteht. Aber man muss befürchten, dass die kreativen Ressourcen der Mitarbeiter nicht ausreichend genutzt werden.
The way you do it is really nice. Very light. Oh, it's not you. No. Very flowing. You can do it with me.
I made a how do you say an accent on the first beat, but in my music it's written on the third. You know the mezzo forte.
Yeah.
Maybe it's nicer not to say heute Stamm, but say das heute Stamm. That's how he wrote it, and maybe that's how I should do it.
Better idea.
Yeah.
It's a very, very new feeling for me. I have to be kind of conductor, but this orchestra is very special because they all tell what they think. They all make music together. It's not 4 or 5 principal musicians who tell the people what to do, but they are all one team, and everyone has ideas, and so it's a big teamwork. It's great work, and a very flexible way of making music. And I can almost act like a conductor. I can bring in my ideas more directly to the orchestra. I can talk to the clarinets. I can, why don't you do it like this? And why don't you play it softer? Why don't we take more time? I mean, usually you can't do that if you're a singer with an orchestra, because the conductor tells them what to do. But now I can be my own conductor.
Eine interaktive Fassade, auf der man mit direkt antatschen kann und spielen kann.
Super. Ja.
Eine interessante Lichtinstallation.
Okay. Kunstausstellung, Design aus.
Impact Download Station.
Ein Kreativprozess bei uns ist immer hierarchielos. Es geht immer darum, wer bringt die beste Idee ein. Da ist es völlig egal, ob die Idee von uns oder von einem Praktikanten oder von sonst wem kommt. Selbst wenn aus dem Finanzcontrolling eine gute Idee kommt, das ist unser Kapital. Umso besser die Idee, umso schöner, und die wird auch aufgenommen und durchgesetzt, weil genau das ist etwas, was uns ausmacht, dass wir eben aus ganz vielen Bereichen Ideen zusammenfassen können. Und bei uns ist wird so viel Kreativität gefordert und so viele Ideen tagtäglich müssen produziert werden, dass es auch überhaupt nicht die Exklusivität eines Einzelnen sein kann, Ideengeber zu sein. Wir sind darauf angewiesen, dass jeder mitarbeitet.
One of the questions that comes up with Orpheus is the question of scale. Can you take something that works very well or can work very well for a 26-person ensemble and scale it up, either to a 100-person full orchestra or to a large corporation, for example?
We don't want to have a 15-layer hierarchy, but we need to have some hierarchy in order to ensure that we're reducing complexity, that we're able to make decisions in a fast way. I mean, we really can't sit there and debate forever and try to arrive at every decision through a consensus. So we have flattened it to the degree possible. But since we are a little bit more complex than an organization of 30 people that are sitting in one room and able to communicate with each other with eye cues, with body language, we're virtual, we're sending emails, we're signing deals in local markets. We need to have a hierarchy, but I think that it's a very enlightened hierarchy.
But I'm wondering,
our pitch is going up, it's because it's hot too.
If we could try a little separation between bum-bum, just so it has a real spoken point. Yeah.
And the first one, maybe longer. Bum, bum, bum. Let's try that. Let's fix the first bar. We're stuck on the first bar. I knew it. I predicted it.
Not too deliberate, though, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're constantly looking at how we're doing things, trying to be at the leading edge of organizational ideas, making sure that our people are as open as possible in order to ensure that their creativity, their creative juices continue to flow in the organization. And Orpheus sounds like a natural partner. I mean, to sort of like go and gain some insights from something that's very innovative in its own field. The wonderful process of watching an orchestra without a conductor producing a wonderful product, which is music, to the satisfaction of the people sitting in the room is a very nice metaphor for us to gain some insights as to how we do our work and think about ways to maybe change some of what we're doing.
In diesem Orpheus-Prozess ist vielleicht am interessantesten, dass ein spielerischer Umgang mit Hierarchien gepflegt und erprobt wird. Und gerade in einem Orchester, das normalerweise sehr stark hierarchisch organisiert ist, wie auch in Unternehmen, da ist es besonders wichtig, auch zu zeigen, dass dort vielleicht sogar die besseren künstlerischen Ergebnisse erzielt werden, wenn die Hierarchien wechseln oder sich auflösen. Und wenn das Mitspracherecht von Musikern gleichberechtigter ist, als das bis jetzt passiert. Es können viele Orchester ohne Dirigent spielen. Das ist nicht das zentrale Thema, denke ich. Das zentrale Thema des Orchesters ist, dass bestimmte Positionen im Orchester wechseln. Das heißt, innerhalb einer Instrumentengruppe die Führungsposition ausgetauscht wird. Und dadurch, dass jemand eine Führungsposition einnimmt und dann vielleicht eine Stunde später oder eine halbe Stunde später eine Position einnimmt, die sich an die Führungsposition anpassen muss. Und dass dieses funktioniert, dass man Rollen wechseln kann, dass man flexibel bleibt, dass man auch im Kopf flexibel bleibt dadurch. Und dass man dadurch natürlich auch flexibel insgesamt im Spiel wird, heißt im Unternehmen insgesamt flexibel in den Entscheidungen. Das ist, glaube ich, das Zentrale.
And then at one point Richard said, well, he still wants to go into it, so now it's we're not doing anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to go away. And then with a little hope at the end.
I think that we should exaggerate it more.
Ah, that's better. And that's what I'm trying.
Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah, I think as a group we need to exaggerate.
So the long note, it actually...
I first want to say that I've listened to you last night, and it was a total delight for me and my wife, and we went home really enchanted by what we heard. But looking at the process today, I almost feel like it's a miracle. It actually happened. So my more critical comment, which is really a real naive question, maybe. If we're differentiating between the process and the results, it seems to be pretty unanimous that you're saying from the process perspective, we're delighted we don't have this arrogant guy who is waving at us to tell us what to do. So we are more satisfied, if I can talk about sort of like terms that we use in sort of like the corporate world. I mean, your job satisfaction is higher, you're maybe more content individuals, you feel that you have a say in your ultimate product. Using Marxistic terms, you're less alienated from the result. But then, if I'm looking at it from the other paradigm of the result itself, you were great last night, but maybe could you have been greater if there was a conductor here that would have made you miserable, but maybe a better result? Are you very confident that at the end of the day, you're not falling into the dynamics of group think? Because one of the things that I would like to point out is that when I was listening to some of your comments, the gentleman here was saying there's not enough muscle here. And the other lady, I think, was saying we need to be much more sensitive. And everybody nodded to both statements. And they were totally opposite from one another. So where do you end up, with being more sensitive or having a muscle? I kind of like wasn't sure.
Well, the truth is, the last night's concert could have been better, but only according to our standards. And would it have been better with a conductor? We'll never know. It can't. the bottom line of what is decided here is the choreography of leadership. And when we get on the stage, we haven't always decided every single detail. But what we have decided is who is responsible for leading every given moment. And it changes from second to second. Musical score is our conductor. And it's when we do our job properly and everybody sees the big picture, we become the music.
Wenn ich mir diesen Prozess angeguckt habe, fand ich das unglaublich interessant, dass so viele Leute miteinander arbeiten können, ohne dass einer sich versucht, in den Vordergrund zu spielen oder ohne dass versucht, einer alles an sich zu reißen und den ganzen Prozess zu dominieren. Dass wirklich jeder sich auf jeden eingestellt hat und dass es um den Gesamtprozess ging, dass man versucht hat, den Prozess nach vorne zu bringen und nicht sich selber.
I probably missed seeing like a real conflict in action. I mean, something that actually takes place in our organization, not for any malicious purposes, but because we have very strong opinionated people and they're sitting around one table and one has a very strong opinion this way and the other one the other way. And sometimes you wonder, how would this orchestra handle this? It seemed a very harmonious kind of a process. And sometimes reality is not quite as harmonious as this may have been.
Japanese work culture was one of the reasons that Japan became a leading nation in the field of technology. However, their rigid structures stifled the creativity required for the IT revolution, and other countries passed them by.
Our concept is the best of two worlds. We bring the best of the West as well as the best of Japan and the East. And when you think of consensus building, when you think of teamwork, you immediately think of Japanese management. But in reality, the Japanese structure is very hierarchical. And the Japanese economy is at a stall right now because of structural reforms that have not been implemented. And a group like Orpheus brings to the base of Japan, which has consensus and which has teamwork, a new approach of openness, flexibility, boundarylessness. So these are all new concepts brought to Japan from the West, and the combination, I think, is dramatic.
My parents were always sticklers for listening, which is rare, I know, because everybody knows us Americans as talkers. We do a lot of talking and we don't do much listening. But they're laughing because they know. But during the first 3, 4, 5 rehearsals, they'd be discussing the music, and I would just be sitting there. And someone would turn around and say, "Well, what do you have to add?" I'm like, "I have nothing to add." I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. It was amazing. The idea that sometimes your part is not the lead line is something that never occurred to me. So I'm learning more than I could have ever learned by running my mouth. So, you know.
Great. Let me just ask the orchestra members what it's like to have Branford.
Oh, that's not. That lunch was beautiful. Thank you.
Great. Do you have disagreement with each other? I mean, if that happens, what do you do?
Well, we had a I don't even think Nardo would think of it as a disagreement, but yesterday before the concert, we were playing the Mio Creation of the World, and there's this, the second movement starts out, there's a piano part, and then a bass solo, and then followed by a trumpet, followed by a trombone, followed by the saxophone. And we have this line, ba 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 da, ba 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 da, and there's this way that I've been playing it for the last year. And Nardo says, well, if Jordan, the bass player, if Jordan's going to play it that way, everybody should play it the way Jordan plays it. Now, I personally like the way I play it better. But then I started to think about what Nardo said, and it's like, well, he's right. You know, there's 5 people playing the same line. There should be some cohesiveness. And so am I going to stand here and try to get everybody to play it like me? And since everybody's almost playing it like that, what makes more sense? So I just played it the way everybody else played it. And when I did it, was that you last night? I played it and somebody went, yeah, like, yeah, finally, exactly. It's about time. There you go. No, it was Dennis. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that happen because you can't afford to allow your ego to get in the way, or your lack of ego, I should say, your insecurities to come to the forefront, because you have to understand that the only reason he would say that is to improve the music. There's no hidden agenda here. And I think that it's unique to be in a situation where so many musicians understand that. In any organization, when that's the hardest part, I think, in any organization, business or otherwise. Is to get people to put aside. They say, well, the standard quote in the States is, you know, check your egos at the door. But I think that more appropriately would be check your insecurities at the door.
Japanese is
not used to negotiation. As a matter of fact, some people say Japanese are the worst people who at the negotiation. Chinese people are more outspoken. Korean people are more outspoken. Japanese culture is more rather quiet. Taciturnity is something that be valued for a long time. Even though it's changing slowly. So people have to get used to express their views without offending other people. And also the other people who is listening has to learn not to be offended.
We're treating them as grace notes, which is actually better for propelling the tempo, but it's not quite correct. Why don't we try to right on the 8th note, but without slowing down.
But having the gesture still go to the chord.
Yes. You think it should go to the second bar?
Oh, really?
I don't know, announcement and then now it starts.
Here it starts.
I
think they're all equal. I think they're just like 3, timpani whacks there. No offense. I mean, I just think they're just an announcement. Nothing. There's no real direction.
Let's try. Yeah, let's try Bob's suggestion.
More, less, more.
Which one? Yeah, more. Yeah, going to the second bar.
What I find interesting about the Orpheus process is it's really about building team sort of emotional intelligence. Here's a group of 30 or more musicians with an obvious commitment to a high quality end product, their music, right? They're starting with a score, we're starting with a blank piece of paper, but theoretically we all have the same interest in an excellent end product. They're able to suspend some disbelief, if you will, in the other's point of view, or disagreement, and at least try. That's team emotional intelligence. That's what all of us need to do better. And I think in the process, you're going to energize individuals to step up and be leaders.
Is it possible to have one big picture? One big picture shared by all of the members. Is that possible?
Musical point of view, we understand not only, oftentimes when you have a conductor, you only play from your part. You don't really try to understand other parts or trying to learn what's going on in other parts. So where Orpheus, you have to learn whole score, what everybody has, when, how, that fits into the entire music. That's what, some of us are talking about big picture. And not necessarily your picture out there that you're going to see. But eventually it is the picture.
Not everything in a performance is the way, I guess, I imagined it. But the point is, it's ever evolving, and there is no one way to interpret it. But there's a sense of enfranchisement that each person has the right and the obligation to be involved in the process. And so even if it's not the way, I may politic for a certain idea, and if I'm smart enough, I'll realize if I don't have a chance. So I put it out, and if it's not going to happen, that's okay. That's okay. If I was dismissed, if I made that suggestion and the only response was, or worse, I think that would not make me feel, I would feel alienated.
Kenji, you had a question.
Yes, I'm curious about the function of the eye contact. I observed that some of you use the eye contact, but some of you don't. So
We'd like to know who did
it. You often use? No. The Bavarian people don't use? Because of the instrument or the personality?
I can tell you look at this page. Many notes that you really have to concentrate.
Also.
It's largely personal style too. I think when I listen to somebody, I tend to look in the direction that I'm listening, and I think a lot of people do listen more peripherally, and their ears come out like really focused.
As you noticed, we make comments about what one another is doing and how we can improve it, but not in a personal sense. I mean, with the idea that we all have the common goal of making the highest possible quality music that we can.
I played with the group for maybe 10 years before I actually developed a voice that people would listen to. It just takes a while. It takes quite a while to get the skills, to learn the skills, to work with this.
What I wanted to say before, it takes a while to learn to have your voice, but actually after that it's important to learn to be quiet. Because things can degenerate into talking. And actually, the analogy that I like to use is that of having a credit limit. And so if you make a really strong point, it's the kind of point, some points take, you'll use up more credit than others. It's also like the way the group is structured. I'm always sitting in the back, and every remark you make from the back uses up more credit because everyone has to turn around and the back.
Process is really just a small part of what we do. We're making it into something huge. What we do is play the music, and that's our main goal. That's our big picture, to bring you our best performance of the music. This is why I'm here. I choose to be here because we have a very good chance of making this magic for you.
Our business school was created to change Japan for good. And the metaphor today is exactly the message the students should take away, because some of these students are company sponsored. And we want these students to go back to their organization and make it flat. I don't know if they'll rotate the president, but they can certainly learn the structural reform that's needed to really change a big organization that they belong to. And it's very important that the students get a tacit knowledge. This is coming from their body and learning something not mentally here in the head, but really in the heart and the stomach.
Musicians know when something works, and they know when it doesn't work. And in a community of practice like Morgan Stanley, where you have very, very bright people from a lot of different parts of the world, different cultures, coming together to talk about something, something similar goes on, and that is when the group thinks that's really good, it is really good. And when the group thinks that's not very good, it's not very good. So you're striving for the same kind of sense of the music But can you know it was the best thing that could have possibly been done? You never know for sure. And I guess at the end of the day, you would judge this on the strength of, is the client really happy? Is this the best product of its kind in the market? Are people responding to it? Are we getting a market share because people are responding to it? You have some objective measures where they might not tell you it was perfect and the best, but they would tell you it was better than anybody else's and it was very good at its time.
All right.